For months, Earth's skies were silent. The invasion had come swiftly, an overwhelming force of cold, precision-born alien engineering that called itself the Vora. They didn't land in fire and fury. No, they simply hovered, cloaked in the upper atmosphere like a constant storm cloud. They broadcast a single message across all frequencies in every human language. You will surrender or you will be erased. The governments folded faster than anyone expected. The UN crumbled. Superpowers signed treaties behind closed doors, bartering away sovereignty. For survival, they called it strategic compliance. But on the streets, we called it what it was: cowardice. My name is Reed Maddox, former naval engineer, dishonorably discharged for questioning a superior officer's orders during the Bangkok blackout. I had no medals, no rank, and no future. Just a record that labeled me insubordinate trash. That record got me recruited. They came for me in the middle of the night. No badge, no uniform, just a knock on the steel door of my workshop outside the Nevada wastes. A man in a dust-covered coat handed me a sealed data chip and muttered, "For Earth, if you still give a damn." Then he vanished. That chip held blueprints, ship's tech I'd never seen before, energy systems, decades beyond anything Earth ever developed, and on the top of every document was a single logo burned in black: Shadow Fleet. I didn't know if it was a joke, a trap, or a fantasy cooked up by some doomsday patriot. But I built the first engine anyway. 3 months later, it roared to life in my underground hangar. No combustion, no emissions, just a low hum like a wolf's growl and gravity-defying lift. I wasn't the only one. All across the globe, outcasts, blacklisted soldiers, rogue scientists, and traitors like me were building the pieces of a fleet the world didn't know existed. A fleet hidden beneath oceans, buried deserts, and drifting silent above the dark side of the moon. The media told the people we were doomed. Surrender was survival. Resistance was madness, but they didn't know the truth. Earth never surrendered. The politicians did. The rest of us, we built something they'd never see coming. By the time the Vora began sending down enforcers, towering biomech soldiers with no faces and no mercy, we were ready. The first real strike came over Siberia. The Vora leveled a resistance compound, suspected of housing tech smugglers. No survivors. But they missed the real target. Nearby canyon carved deep into the frozen ground where Shadow Fleet's first completed destroyer had been waiting. The Revenant. I was on board when we launched her. No fanfare, no flags, just a cold, humming silence in the command deck, and 5 other men who, like me, had nothing left to lose. We didn't ask for permission. We didn't answer to governments. We answered to one thing: Earth's dignity. I remember watching the Revenant rise. Through the ice-blown clouds, the stars unfolding above us. I remember the weight of silence as we broke atmosphere. No cheering, no music, just raw focus. And I remember the voice of Captain Devereaux as he stood at the helm and gave the first order of resistance: make them bleed. We attacked a Vor scout ship, took it down in less than 4 minutes. Bastards didn't see it coming. They thought humanity was done. Broken. Bent over by our own leaders who couldn't stomach the idea of a war we might lose. What they didn't know is we'd been building in the shadows for 10 years. The Vor's calculation was perfect, but their math didn't account for human spite. Now they know. We are not compliant, we are not afraid. And we are not done, we are the shadow fleet, and we're just getting started. The Revenant drifted silently in low orbit, cloaked by adaptive plates forged Vor alloys we'd stolen during early recon raids. We were invisible to their scans, their satellites, their goddamn arrogance. We stared down at Earth like ghosts, haunting a home that forgot us. Targets acquired, said Brennan, the ship's tactical systems officer. Ex-Space Force, booted after a political scapegoat scandal. He pointed at the screen. 2 Vor cruisers descending over West Africa, civilian suppression protocol. Standard sweep. Translation, Devereaux muttered. They're about to torch a refugee sector and call it pacification. He gritted his teeth and turned to me. Maddox, you good with the jump engine? As good as it gets, I said, checking my readouts, but a full charge only. Gives us 15 seconds of phase shift. We hit fast or not at all. He gave a slow nod. 15 seconds is all I need. We hit the jump drive, the Revenant didn't lurch or twist, it simply vanished, one moment in orbit, the next. Bam, we dropped out in the upper troposphere like a falling hammer. Alarms blared from the cruisers. They scrambled, but they were 2 seconds too late. We were already inside range. Brennan, light them the hell up. Twin lances of kinetic plasma tore through the first cruiser's belly. It broke apart in a brilliant cascade of fire and hissing alien steel. The second managed to loose a shock pulse, an anti-electronics weapon, but our shielding held. Barely. We hit back hard. The Revenant's side guns opened like wrath-made metal. Rail cannons punched holes clean through the second Vora ship until its propulsion gave out and it dropped like a dying god straight into the ocean. Below, silence followed. 2 kills, no civilian casualties, Brennan said flatly. We done being ignored. Not yet, Devereaux answered, eyes locked on the wreckage. Now they know we're real. Let's make sure they remember. But that silence didn't last long. When we returned to the dark side base, Fleet Yard carved into a lunar crater, shielded by tech older than our species. The other captains were already waiting. The Shadow Fleet had grown. What started as whispers was now a war machine. 32 ships, hundreds of fighters. A fleet fueled by desperation and designed by minds no nation would ever hire. We met in the war room, an underground hub, black stone walls and a wide circular table lit by a hollow of earth. Above, you broke first contact, Commander Avery growled. She was former British intel. Tough, brutal, and utterly cold. You triggered retaliation without full council clearance. With all due respect, Devereaux snapped, the Vora weren't asking for permission to incinerate children. I didn't feel the need to ask either. You exposed the fleet. No, I cut in, stepping beside the captain. We announced the fleet. You think hiding in a crater was the plan forever? Avery stood, fists on the table. You don't understand, Maddox. We don't have the numbers for open war. You built the engines, you've seen the output curves. We can't sustain this. Not yet. Then we die slowly, Devereaux fired back, one compound at a time, one bloodbath at a time, while the official governments hold peace talks with monsters. A voice spoke from the shadows. The Vora were never here for peace. Everyone turned. It was Gareth. Damn, I almost slipped, not using the name Ilias. Gareth, former NASA Black Ops, he only spoke when things were near breaking. His face was tight, his voice low. The transmissions we intercepted last week, I cracked their core language set. The Vora don't view us as a civilization, they see Earth as harvestable biomass, nothing more. The whole surrender talk a cover. Delay tactic while they build the main siphoning rigs in orbit. The room went silent. He clicked a console. A hollow map flickered to life. An orbiting construction site, hidden in Lagrange's shadow, protected by 10 massive Vora sentinels. It's called the Gorge Core. Once it's complete, they'll drain the oceans, the atmosphere, even trace metals. It's not conquest, it's stripping a planet bare. How long? I asked, my mouth dry. Less than 60 days. We stood there, staring at the death of Earth in 3D. All the debates, all the warnings, all the surrender talk, it was theater, designed to distract the species while the knife went in. Devereaux's voice dropped into gravel. Then we hit them first. Avery crossed her arms. With what? A handful of ships. You want to charge into orbit against 10 capital sentinels with junkyard cruisers. They're not junk anymore, I said. We've got the engine tech. We've got gravity shields. We've got the drive ghosts. And we've got one more thing, Devereaux said. He stepped closer to the table, and the edge in his voice turned cold. We've got nothing left to lose. That's when the alarm triggered, red lights, sirens, comm chatter blaring across every channel. Base breach, internal breach, we've got infiltrators. Chaos. The war room shook. I heard the distant thump of explosions down the eastern shaft. How the hell did they get inside? Gareth roared. Brennan pulled a feed onto the hollow screen. What we saw made my blood run cold. They weren't Vora, they were humans, UN Black Ops, not supposed to exist. Gear was military, but not on any registry. Every man moved like a ghost, firing with kill precision. They sent hit squads, Devereaux muttered. The same bastards that signed surrender treaties, they just tried to wipe us out. Avery was already calling orders. Evacuate Deck 4, lock off the hangars, get every ship to alert status. We scrambled. I ran to the hangar bay with Devereaux and Brennan. As we sprinted through the curved lunar corridors, I saw bodies. Techs, engineers, even kids who worked in comms, shot in the back, executed. They didn't want to capture Shadow Fleet, they wanted to erase us. We reached Revenant just as the outer doors were breached. I heard metal groan, the distinct whine of a pressure drill grinding into the airlock. Punch launch protocols, Devereaux shouted. I jumped into the systems. Panel engines hot, grav core humming. Cloak active. The Revenant lifted just as the intruders broke through. One of them, masked, armored, ran into the hangar, saw our ship rising, and launched a shock missile. Too slow. We cleared the launch tunnel and blasted into space, leaving fire and betrayal our wake. That's it then, Brennan said later, voice shaking in the silence of orbit. The Earth governments just made us enemy number one. No, Devereaux said, eyes locked on the Gorge Core orbiting in the distance. They made us the last line Earth has. The truth was simple. The Vor wanted to strip the planet bare. And the people we once called our leaders They were helping them. We didn't just have to fight aliens, we had to burn the traitors with them. 3 days after the breach on the dark side base, we were back in the black. Silent. Watching. The Revenant drifted like a ghost in the debris field of a broken weather satellite, hiding between scraps of obsolete tech and shattered solar wings. Earth loomed far beneath us, blue and vulnerable, but our eyes were on the monsters above it. There it was. One of the Vora Sentinels. It hung in orbit like a god made of knives, black, jagged, motionless, no lights, no heat. Trails, just a perfect triangle of death, outlined against the stars. That was our target. We weren't there to destroy it, not yet. We were there to board it. You're sure this plan isn't suicide? Brennan muttered, running a systems check with twitchy hands. Not sure, I said. But it's what we've got. Good enough, Devereaux said. He stood behind the command chair, arms crossed, eyes locked on the Titan in front of us. We breach, we extract data, and we get the hell out before it wakes up. Gareth had spent the last 48 hours decoding Vora communication bands, trying to intercept signals bouncing between the gorge core and the orbiting Sentinels. Most of it was encrypted beyond anything human tech could crack. But something in the static didn't sit right with him. They're not just guarding the core, he'd told us. They're waiting, sinking, preparing something. So, we had to know what. The plan was simple. Use the Revenant's drive ghost tech to glide past the Sentinel's detection radius, latch onto its hull, and send a small infiltration team, me, Brennan, and Devereaux, into the ship through one of its venting nodes. If we could crack its internal systems and download even a fragment of its command structure, we'd know what the hell they were building, and more importantly, how to kill it. The moment of contact was near. I could hear my own heartbeat in the silence. Engaging clamped talons, I whispered. The Revenant's undercarriage extended. 6 razor arms that latched onto the Vora's hull with precision. No alarms, no resistance. It was like grabbing onto a sleeping dragon's tail. We suited up, vacuum gear, silent boots, hardwired oxygen, no comms, just gesture signals and hand pads. The moment we left the Revenant, we were on our own. The hull breach was a slow, silent process. My torch ate through Vora metal like it was frozen glass. It hissed and peeled, flaking off in dull purple sheets. Inside was darkness, not just unlit but wrong, like the shadows were thicker than they should be. We crawled in. The corridor wasn't built for anything. With legs, organic wires hung from the ceiling like veins. The walls pulsed faintly, and the air, or what passed for it, smelled of metal and rot. I don't like this. Brennan signed. Focus, Devereaux signed back. We moved deeper, following Gareth's map. Assumptions based on Vora ship design. Every few meters, we passed strain. Glyphs burned into the walls. No language, just symbols that made your skin crawl if you stared too long. Then we reached it. The core chamber. A giant sphere suspended in anti-gravity, humming with sickly green light. Beneath it, consoles, alien tech, floating with no visible support, flashed with unreadable data. And there, near the far wall, was a pod. Human-sized. Glowing. What the hell is that? I signed. Devereaux moved closer. The pod's surface shimmered like glass, but what was inside wasn't mechanical. It was Organic, it looked like a human. But not quite. Tall, pale gray skin. Black veins and a face twisted in agony. Tubes ran from its neck into the ship's walls like it had been hardwired into the machine. And then its eyes opened. I didn't scream. I couldn't. The thing stared right at me, right through me, and mouthed something I couldn't hear. Then the console behind it flared. Alarms in Vora frequency. The room shuddered. We'd been found. Move. Devereaux shouted, breaking the silence, as the room came alive with pulses of red light. Brennan ran to the core console, slamming a spike chip into the nearest data port. I need 30 seconds, he shouted, fingers flying over the keys. I turned back to the pod, still locked, still glowing, and the figure inside was now convulsing like it was in pain. Its mouth kept moving. Help me, it was mouthing. I didn't want to look. I couldn't help. It looked human, twisted, remade. But human. Brennan, download complete. Devereaux barked. Got it, let's go. But it was too late. The walls opened. Avera drone stepped out, 12 ft tall. Limbs like razors, no face, just a swirling mist inside a glass dome. It lunged. Devereaux fired first, 2 plasma rounds to the chest. Useless. I swung my torch, slammed it into the drone's side, and it shrieked, a sound like metal being tortured. It staggered. Go, Devereaux yelled. Get to the breach. We ran. Every step echoed. Whole ship was alive now, moaning, pulsing, chasing us with lights and sound. We turned corner after corner. The drone howling behind us. Brennan was bleeding, slashed along his arm. I grabbed him and dragged him down the final shaft. The breach hole was still there. The revenant's clamped talons waited. We jumped. The moment our boots hit the hull, the clamps released and the revenant's engines roared to life. We were gone. Back in orbit, we sat in the command room, panting, shaking. Play it, Devereaux said. Brennan inserted the spike chip. The room dimmed. A projection flickered on the wall. It was a schematic. The gorge core. The sentinels. Earth below, and in the middle, something massive. Not a siphon. Not a weapon, a gate, a ring structure. Unlike anything we'd seen. Not just big. Planetary scale. They're not just harvesting Earth, Gareth said as the realization hit. They're building a corridor. A corridor to where? I asked. He looked at me, pale. Not where. Who? They're bringing someone. I stared at the last frame of the projection, dozens of pods like the one we saw, dozens of humans altered, bound into the systems like batteries. And in the center, one massive pod, 5 times the size of the others, still inactive, labeled their code as Sovereign Seed. Then Gareth showed us the last translated phrase: the harvest completes. When the seed awakens, Earth is the nursery. Devereaux turned to me, his voice flat. We were never at war with the Vora. I nodded slowly, heart sinking. No, we were a lab experiment, a breeding ground. Silence. And then the captain said the words that changed everything. Set course for the gorge core. The gorge core hung in space like a colossal parasite latched to Earth's skin. Miles long, circular, alive. Every sensor scan screamed one word: unassailable. But we didn't have time to care. Inside that core was a creature or machine called the Sovereign Seed, and it wasn't just some alien leader waiting to invade. It was already here, dormant and feeding on Earth's heat, on its gravity. On us. They're birthing it from our planet. Gareth had told us every piece of technology they've deployed has been adjusting Earth's orbit, its magnetic field, even the moon's influence. For what? I asked. Gareth didn't answer for a long time. Then he looked up and said, to make Earth's death a perfect cradle. Now we were going to kill it before that happened. We didn't go in with 30 ships. We couldn't afford to. The attack squad was just 4 vessels, Revenant our Spear, Phantom Veil, a stealth destroyer with EMP payloads, Trench Dog, a blunt force escort ship captained by a lunatic named Wex, and Sky Mourner, a carrier-turned-weapons platform. It wasn't much, but it was enough. This wasn't about winning. This was about delaying. We launched from low Earth orbit, cloaked under solar interference. The Vora hadn't moved the Sentinels, but they'd activated defensive satellites. Hundreds of them, each one equipped with guided rail guns and quantum mines. Brennan, we fly through that cloud, Devora growled, and we do it without taking a scratch. Brennan laughed without humor. No pressure. We entered the satellite ring at full burn, no comms, no lights, nothing but the sound of our own breathing and the low hum of systems primed for impact. The first mine came in like a blur. Sharp left, I barked. Revenant dipped hard, and the mine exploded against a chunk of space debris behind us, lighting up the stars in white flame. Trench Dog didn't dodge, Wex screamed over open comms as his ship rammed through 2 of the mines and went dark, spinning into the void. He's gone, Brennan said. No, he's not. Devora replied, look. Wex's ship, shredded but burning, slammed into one of the defensive satellites and detonated his fusion core. Chain reaction, 8 satellites gone in. 1 blast. 1 lunatic just cleared our path, I muttered. Don't mourn him yet, Devora said. We might be joining him soon. The gorge core appeared up close, like something made from bones and black glass. It wasn't spinning, but it felt like gravity was warped around it. We aimed for the equatorial trench. The exposed seam Gareth believed was its nerve center. That's when the Sentinels came online, 10 of them. Towering war constructs with gravitational lances that could fold a ship in half. We didn't stand a chance until Sky Mourner lit up. Captain Darrow, exiled from the European Defense Fleet for refusing to nuke a rebel city, had wired his entire ship with self-replicating nano bombs. He didn't say goodbye, just hit the throttle and plowed into the first Sentinel with all weapons hot. He took 3 down with him before he detonated. The blast shattered our shields. Revenant went spinning, but we caught ourselves. Only Phantom Veil and Revenant remained. Brennan, breach window. 17 seconds. The trench will be open as the gravitational tide resets. After that, it's suicide. 17 seconds, Darrow repeated. All we need. We plunged into the trench like a bullet. The ship screamed. Hull stress reached red. The internal light stuttered. I held onto the console like a lifeline. Outside, the walls of the core pulsed with eerie green light, alive and watching. Alien drones swarmed from hatches, but Phantom Veil swept them aside with precise EMP bursts. We reached the nerve node, a massive sphere surrounded by antennas and cables, thicker than buildings. This is it, I said. Hit the spike. Brennan launched the data spike into the node. Darrow shouted, "Hold position." Then it happened. The node opened, and we saw inside thousands of human figures, suspended, drained, twisted. The missing, the dead, the relocated from surrendered cities. They hadn't been executed, they'd been fed into the core, each one wired to pulsating veins, each one whispering in pain through unending cycles of neural harvest. A woman floated near the front, eyes still open, her lips moved. "Stop it." That's when the sovereign seed began to wake. A voice, not sound but a vibration, inside our skulls rippled through the ship. "You are fuel. You are function. You are nothing else." Brennan screamed and dropped to his knees. I felt my own nose bleeding. My vision flickered. The seed was speaking through our minds, digging into memory, identity, everything. Devereaux gritted his teeth, blood pouring from his ears. "Hit the breach core," he roared. I activated the final charge. The Revenant's ventral missile bay opened and launched the experimental neutron slicer. Our last real shot. It wasn't meant to destroy the seed, just to cut its connection from the node. The blast hit, the lights inside the trench dimmed, the floating bodies dropped, and the seed screamed. The psychic shriek echoed through every system. Our ship went dead, no engines, no lights. We floated in darkness. Then a whisper from Phantom Veil. "Extraction ready." One shot. We activated manual thrusters, limping away from the dying nerve node. The sovereign seed writhed, but it wasn't dead, just stunned. Brennan groaned. Devereaux was unconscious. I crawled to the console, rebooting systems manually, one fuse at a time. We crawled out of the gorge cores, trench battered and bleeding, but alive. Back in safe orbit, the data spike decrypted. The truth. The seed was not the leader. It was a prototype. The real sovereign wasn't even in this system. The Vora were harvesting Earth to create a new body for it, a god-level intelligence expelled from their own dimension after it destroyed their home worlds. And we were the womb. Earth wasn't just a target, it was a factory, a sacrifice. And we had 60 hours until the seed reached maturity. Devereaux stood in front of the command table, bruised and barely standing. No more hiding, no more strikes. I knew what he meant before he said it. We call them every ship, every outpost, every hidden station. We rally now, all of us, or we die screaming in the dark. I looked down at the screen, at the dead faces, at the seed's core pulse still ticking on our radar. "Then we take Earth back," I whispered. Devereaux nodded. "We take it back, or we burn trying." We sent the signal just after dawn over Asia. Every secure frequency, every buried relay, every pirate satellite still orbiting under civilian radar. We hacked global defense networks, overridden blacklisted comms, and used the Revenant's reactor pulse to ping out one last call. Earth still stands. The Shadow Fleet is real. If you haven't bent your knee to the Vora, we need you now, all of you. It took 11 minutes to go global. Then the replies started flooding in. First were the independents, small bands, refugees turned raiders, engineers hiding in tunnels and ice bunkers. They called from frozen mountain stations, burned out oil rigs, and ruined spaceports. Some barely had working gear, others had full prototypes of weapons. Earth governments claimed never existed. Then came the defectors, pilots from the old European orbital wing, Russian engineers thought killed during the Ural uprising, a woman calling herself Commander Lyra, who once ran orbital ops for the African Continental Union, now operating an entire hangar of hacked Vora drones she'd repurposed as human weapons. But the biggest surprise, the Arctic divide. For years, nobody knew what had happened to the crew of the White Echo, an underwater research vessel that vanished after the invasion began. Everyone assumed they died when the Vora's seismic pulses collapsed the northern seawalls. They hadn't. They'd been building a fleet, and they'd been watching. Their reply was cold, direct, no names. Shadow Fleet confirmed. Orders received. We strike in 72 hours. Back on the Revenant, Devereaux paced to the war room like a man with 1 hour to live. His eyes were bloodshot, his hands wouldn't stop clenching. We hadn't slept in nearly 2 days. This isn't enough, he said. A few hundred ships, even if we scrape the crust of Earth clean. We won't stop that thing. The Sovereign Seed still stunned. Gareth said, our neutron strike scrambled its psychic field. It's regenerating, not growing. And when it's done regenerating, then we all die. I looked at the map. Hundreds of ships were on the move now, converging on high orbit around the moon, some arriving in hours, others days. But time was bleeding out. We have to hit it before it reawakens. I said, even if it means leaving people behind. Devereaux looked at me. That cold, weathered face, the man who'd lost his entire command the day Earth surrendered. He nodded. Then we hit it with everything we've got. We called the strike plan Operation Eclipse. One final push before Earth was swallowed. The strategy was ugly. The Gorge core had recovered 40% of its orbital defenses. The Seed's neural resonance was back to 30% of optimal. If it reached 100%, the data said, nothing human, no missile, no pulse, no neutron slicer would matter anymore. The core's outer trench was now crawling with Vora drones, hundreds of them. Worse, the Sentinels were rebuilding, absorbing space debris and forming into new shapes. Organic, smarter. You ever heard of adaptive architecture? Gareth asked me in the command bay. Not like this. He nodded grimly. They're not ships anymore, they're organisms. The fleet gathered at the dark side of the moon. Hundreds of ships, each one patched together from old junk, alien wreckage, or stolen tech. A graveyard force, but alive. We transmitted the plan. No vote, no debate. Every ship hits the core at once. Some dive into its power relays and detonate. Others unleash EMP blasts into the trenches. The Revenant leads the final assault, straight into the heart of the Seed. But not everyone agreed. That night we intercepted a private signal, encrypted, buried in layers of orbital noise. We cracked it. It came from Earth's surface, from the old Geneva complex, the same place the UN held their last session before signing the Vora Compliance Act. The message was from someone calling himself Chancellor Miles, former Secretary General. He looked older than the last time he'd been seen. Gaunt eyes too bright. But his voice, smooth, measured. Shadow Fleet, cease your assault. Humanity's survival depends on balance, not defiance. The Vora have promised our preservation. If we deliver you, this is not surrender, it's stewardship. I stared at the screen in disbelief. You have got to be kidding me, Brennan growled. Play it again, Devereaux said, his tone dangerous. We did. Same message, word for word. He'd recorded it as if it were a fact, as if he owned the truth now. Gareth ran a trace. The location checked out. The Geneva complex was active again, a rebuilt communication hub, and worse. He's not alone, Gareth said. We're picking up multiple energy signatures. Underground, ships not Vora human. Hidden fleets. How many? Enough to challenge us. Devereaux didn't blink. Then we have another target. I didn't sleep the night before the assault. I sat alone in the Revenant's engine room, watching the plasma cycle spin like a dying star. I thought about what Miles said about stewardship. It wasn't peacekeeping, it was guard duty. Humanity volunteering to protect the thing that would destroy us in exchange for a seat at its feet. And somehow they believed it, because cowards always prefer obedience over uncertainty. Devereaux joined me at some point. Didn't say anything at first. Then he spoke quietly. I had a son. I looked up. He was 10 when the Vora arrived. Smart kid, used to build model ships in our garage, always asked questions, always hungry for more. He paused, swallowed. When the UN signed the treaties, they told us they'd relocate key personnel's families to secure shelters. I didn't believe them. But I had orders. They put him on a carrier shuttle. I never saw him again. I said nothing. Just listened. After Bangkok, after I was discharged, I tried to track the carrier. You know where it ended up? I shook my head. He looked straight at me. One of the first feeding stations, near the Pacific Core site. They used those shuttles to stock the early neural harvests. His voice broke. I joined the Shadow Fleet that night. Not to win, just to make sure they never forgot what they did to him. He stood and left me there, alone with the hum of the engine and the slow realization. We weren't fighting to survive anymore. We were fighting to hurt them back. The assault began at 400 UTC. From every corner of orbit, ships peeled out like sparks from a firestorm. Fighters surged, destroyers screamed forward. Civilian crafts turned kamikaze. The gorge core opened like a wound. Weapons flew, mines detonated, sentinels lashed out, sky broke apart in flame. The Revenant hit the outer trench first. Gunfire lit up the hull, the shields cracked. I felt every vibration through my teeth. Break to Vector Delta 7, Brennan shouted. We dived. The core trench opened below us, and we fired all side batteries into its neural relay. Sparks, sizzling plasma, burning circuits. Phantom Veil was next, slamming into the command tower like a knife, its final payload detonating in a cascade of EMP. Fury. The seed screamed again, that psychic cry. We felt it like knives behind the eyes. But we kept going. Inside the trench, I saw Geneva-class shipped human vessels, painted with the old UN logo. They were defending the seed, firing at our own kind, gunning down resistant ships that tried to breach. Miles had made good on his betrayal. Drop all safeties, Devereaux barked. Target the humans first. You sure? I asked. They chose their god. We returned fire. Our own kind screamed over open comms. But we didn't stop. One by one they burned. And then we reached the seed. It was awake now. The core pulsed with black light, veins spread across the inner hull, wrapped around Earth's magnetic field. I looked down at the reactor controls. Maddox, Devereaux said. I nodded. It was time. We armed the Revenant's core overload. Not a missile, not a bomb, the ship itself, everything we were, everything we had burned into one last suicide strike. The countdown began. T-minus 30 seconds, ships peeled off. Behind us, escaping the trench. Miles' fleet was gone, incinerated. The seed began to rise. Tentacles of dark matter pushing out from the core, trying to reach orbit, to reach Earth. T-minus 20. Devereaux turned to me. No matter what happens next, we made them pay. T-minus 10. Brennan hit the final override. I reached for the throttle. T-minus 5. And then, white light, not fire, a rift tearing open in front of the seed. Something was coming through from there side. The rift opened before the Revenants. Bow, like the universe had been torn open with claws. At first I thought we'd detonated, that maybe the core overload had gone off prematurely. The blinding white swallowed every screen, every sensor, even our retinal optics. But then everything stopped. No explosion, no fire, just silence. It was the kind of silence that feels wrong. The kind that makes you feel like you've left time itself behind. Devereaux staggered against the bulkhead. Brennan vomited into his helmet, retching and gasping as he pulled the visor free. I couldn't breathe either. My lungs were working, but no air came in. I wasn't suffocating. I was forgetting how to breathe, like something inside me was rewriting how I worked. Then the whiteness pulsed, and a voice, not like the seed's psychic scream, but ancient, spoke into every molecule of the ship. Your resistance was unexpected. Devereaux fell to his knees, blood leaking from his ears. I gritted my teeth and shouted into the vacuum, "Who are you?" The white dimmed slightly, forming the outline of something stepping through. At first it looked humanoid, tall, thin, but then it kept growing, its limbs unfolding again, as if it didn't care about rules like scale or mass. The readings on the Revenant's console began displaying mathematical impossibilities, ratios that didn't, equations that formed recursive symbols, and loops. I swear to God, one of them spelled out my name. Brennan screamed, "That's the Sovereign. That's the real one." "No," Gareth said quietly from comms. "That's the thing they were building the seed for. The seed is just a host. That is what it was meant to carry." The being stepped fully into our dimension. Where it walked, space bent, metal warped, time shivered. We were looking at something that didn't evolve. It had been created on purpose and then abandoned. "This vessel," the Sovereign spoke again, "has served its incubation well. Earth's magnetic field is sufficient. Neural biomass satisfactory. The prototype is viable. You're not getting out of here," I muttered. "You misunderstand." The light dimmed, revealing its eyes, if they were eyes, infinite depth, no pupils, like looking into a hole through the concept of hope. "I am not escaping, I am returning." Devereaux managed to stand, his voice rasped, hoarse but steady. "You're not going back through that Rift. You cannot stop what is not in motion. You are still thinking in linearity. That's when the ship tore apart. Not exploded, not damaged, it simply unwound, like a roll of film reversing itself. The corridors of the Revenant bent. Backward. Time cracked. I saw myself across the room. Older, bleeding. Shouting something I hadn't said yet. I saw Brennan dying, a massive wound in his chest. I saw Earth empty, hollow. Burned out core with a single structure. On its surface, the Sovereign sitting on a throne of human bones. And I saw Devereaux holding a child's broken body. I snapped back into the moment. Cut the overload, I shouted. Cut it now. Devereaux hesitated. That thing wants us to explode. The detonation fuels the rift, we power it. Brennan was trying to override the reactor, but the console flickered with alien symbols. The Sovereign was inside the ship's core. Now, reprogramming the overload to full space, not destroy it. The seed wasn't a weapon, it was a womb. And we were the ones delivering the child. Manual shutdown, I said, running to the fusion chamber. You'll get vaporized, Brennan shouted. Better than birthing God. I opened the chamber lock. The radiation wave hit me like a wall of fire. My suit cracked, my skin blistered instantly. But I reached the primary injector coil. I yanked it free. The Revenant's hum died. Everything went black. I woke up 2 hours later, wrapped in emergency gel, my face raw, my chest wrapped in burn mesh. Devereaux sat next to me, half his ribs broken, one eye swollen shut. You stopped it, he said. Did I? He pointed out the viewport. The rift was shrinking, not closing. Not sealed, but retreating. Like something inside realized the trap had failed. Gareth's voice crackled in over. Emergency channels. You disrupted the harmonic cycle. The rift no longer has a power source to fully form. I sat up. The Sovereign. He was silent for a moment, still here. The Sovereign hadn't vanished, it had just descended. We tracked its movement, using raw gravitational shifts, and found it pulling itself into Earth's upper atmosphere. It hovered just above the Atlantic, warping clouds, boiling oceans beneath it. Nations were panicking. The Sky Mourner's remains had relayed the Sovereign's arrival to every comm array, still functional. For the first time in years, the world government sent messages to us. They begged for help, not just the hidden ones like Miles, but even the loyalists, even the cowards who signed away the world. They were all scared now. Earth's skies had turned red. Devereaux stood on the bridge, patched up, still bleeding, but alive. His voice was low. It's not about battle anymore. We can't just attack it. That didn't work. That was never the point. So what do we do? He looked at me. We trap it here. I blinked. You want to imprison a god on Earth? He nodded. It came through a crack. That crack still exists, but now it's vulnerable. Because it committed to form. It became physical. And it hasn't fully adapted yet. Its body is still tuning to our laws. I frowned. And if we lock it to Earth, bind it, we can keep it stuck in decay, not death, but dormancy. Brennan coughed, still weak. And we do that how? With spit and duct tape. No, Gareth said, stepping onto the deck. With a shadow code. We turned to him. He plugged a drive into the table. This, he said, is the core language Setvara used. To enslave the sovereign prototype, it's not control its limitation, it was their fail-safe. Devereaux narrowed his eyes. They were afraid of it too. They created it and then tried to contain it. That's why they needed Earth, not just as food but as a cage. My blood ran cold. So we used their chains against it. Gareth nodded. If we get close enough to transmit the command signal, we bind it to Earth's decaying energy signature. And then, I asked. Then it withers slowly in agony. Forever. Devereaux looked out the window. Good. We only had one ship left that could get close enough. The Revenant stripped burned on backup systems but still flying. We loaded the shadow code into a hard transmission beacon. Old tech. Immune to disruption, designed to send one signal and fry itself in the process. It would have to be manually deployed. I volunteered. No, Devereaux said, you're too valuable to this. I built the engine, Captain. That makes me the mechanic, and if something breaks, I looked at the Earth below. I'll be the one under the hood. The Sovereign hovered in the sky like a dark moon, visible from every continent. It whispered into dreams, into radios, into thoughts. It promised paradise, obedience, immortality. Millions were already kneeling. But not all. Shadow Fleet launched a final wave of escort fighters, drones, and modified shuttles, one last shield, to get the Revenant into range. As we descended into Earth's upper atmosphere, I felt it looking at me. No sensors, just presence. I remember you. I ignored it. You saw your death and still you came. I gritted my teeth. I see what you could have been. Creator, not a destroyer. I whispered into the comms. Shut up. Join me and you can rewrite time itself. I opened the beacon pod and slammed it into activation. Light filled the cockpit. The Sovereign's voice screamed, not just pain, rage, betrayal. The sky fractured with lightning as the command code hit its neural field. The chains took, reality shuddered, it dropped screaming, imploding into itself, slamming into the Atlantic. Shockwave hit the globe, tsunamis, quakes, fires, and then silence. The rift above closed, and the Sovereign stopped moving. Not dead, but bound. They say the Atlantic still pulses, that if you listen, you can hear whispers under the waves. But the rift hasn't reopened, and the seed is dead. The Shadow Fleet disbanded 2 months later. The governments tried to take credit. We let them. But we remember. We were the ghosts that never bowed. We were the mistake in the Sovereign's math. We were the shadow they didn't account for. 3 months after we bound the Sovereign, Earth's core, the world acted like it had won. Cities lit back up. Governments reclaimed their broken thrones. Broadcasts flooded the net with declarations of survival, victory. Parades marched through rubble. The word hope dripped from every speech, like blood washed off clean. But I'd seen what was underneath. The Sovereign didn't die, it was buried, chained to the bones of Earth, sunk beneath the Atlantic where its tendrils still twitched in the trench. Not dead, not defeated, just waiting. And most of Earth had already forgotten. I was grounded now, the Revenant, our ship, our sword, our coffin, was stripped for research and repurposed into a propaganda relic parked in a memorial site outside what used to be Caracas. They gave it a new name. The Earthbreaker. They painted it white, polished the hull, removed the damage, and trauma like it was something to be ashamed of. And Devereaux, gone. He disappeared the day after the mission ended. Some say he took his own life. Others whisper he walked into the ocean, where the Sovereign sleeps, and never came back. I don't believe either. Devereaux wasn't the type to surrender. He was the type to hide a contingency plan, one no one else would know about, because the real war wasn't over. It was just hushed. I spent most of my time now in the western wastelands, Nevada's dead zone, a solar-scorched stretch of earth left behind after the Vora's harvest fields melted down the atmosphere and burned the biosphere clean. No comms, no patrols, just silence. Exactly what I wanted. That's where Gareth found me. He arrived in a rusted-out hover cycle, wearing scavenged gear and scars that hadn't been there last time we saw each other. His eyes had a shadow in them now. He didn't waste time. They're building again, he said. I turned from the cracked ridge I'd been sitting on. Who? He handed me a data pad. Miles people. What's left of the compliance regime. They're not gone. Just hiding. Underground. I read the screen, satellite traces. Deep energy readings beneath Eastern Europe, high core signatures, familiar. Shapes no Voritech. I looked up. What the hell are they doing? Gareth sighed. Trying to reawaken it or control it. I don't know. They saw what it did. They don't care. They think they can be gods now. That the Sovereign was just a power source, not a threat. My hands curled into fists. Of course. We gave humanity a second chance, and it spit on it. We drove to the rendezvous, a forgotten checkpoint near the Ural Mountains. The bunker was carved into the side of a collapsed mining valley, rusted steel, doors half buried in snow and dirt. Inside, what was left of the Shadow Fleet. 6 people, that's all. Brennan, Gareth, Lyra from the African orbital hangars, Commander Tsung from the Sky Mourners, Engine Corps, a kid named Rafe who never flew a ship, but wired half of the ghost drives, and me. We sat in silence, surrounded by stripped weapon crates and the hum of dying generators. Brennan was the first to speak. They want to clone it. He looked tired, pale, something inside him still broken. They found fragments of the seed in the core wreckage, spinal fibers there, grafting it to human hosts, building hybrid processors. How long? I asked. 6 months, maybe. Less. They're calling it Project Air. The irony made me laugh. The heir to extinction. I asked the only question that mattered. Do we stop it? No one answered. Then Tsung spoke. I lost my entire family in the south. China purge. Vora drones took my sister, my mother. Was wired into a power conduit and left. Alive. If we have to burn what's left of civilization to make sure the Sovereign doesn't return, I'll do it. That was the answer. We were going back to war. We spent the next 3 weeks rebuilding what we could. We didn't have the Revenant. We didn't have a fleet, but we had blueprints, stolen schematics, weapons designs based on Vora frequencies, cloaking systems, refined through old debris. We even had 2 functioning hulls, gutted destroyers that Gareth had recovered from a shadow port off the Baltic coast. We named one Phantom Wrath. The other, Devereaux. Not because we believed he was dead. Because we knew he'd want to be on that field, even if only in name. The target was a facility buried in Poland's old forest line. It was masked as a decontamination lab. But the core was 20 levels deep, far beneath the earth, using geothermal streams to power a new kind of reactor, one tuned to the Sovereign's residual pulse. When we approached in orbit, they knew we were coming. They sent a message. You lost your war. Let the future belong to those willing to shape it. I replied with a single word. Denied. We dropped in fast and dirty EMP drones, blew the upper layer, orbital rounds, tore through the outer towers. Phantom Wrath led the strike with a cloaked missile that shattered the ventilation network, choking their comms. We hit the ground under cover of storm and shrapnel. The entrance was guarded by human drone-spliced soldiers, their minds wired to Vora code. Not quite alive, not quite dead. They fought without hesitation, without fear. We fought harder. I shot a boy who looked no older than 17. His eyes were glazed, mouth moving, as if praying. The bullet dropped him instantly. I hated myself, but I didn't stop. We reached the core chamber 36 minutes after landing. And there it was. The seedling, suspended in a cryo-glass cradle, wired to a human brain cluster, grafted onto Vora's spines, pulsing with the same slow rhythm I'd seen before. Brennan whispered, "This one's not a prototype." Gareth's hands shook. They made it smaller, smarter. It doesn't need a planet. I understood. It was meant to be mobile. A sovereign seed the size of a shuttle, designed for mass deployment, weapons of extinction. They weren't just cloning the sovereign. They were manufacturing gods. Sung triggered the overload. Brennan fired 2 shots into the command console. Lyra wired the beacon, same shadow code we used on the original sovereign, and injected it into the seed's neural loop. It screamed not aloud but into our minds. I am not alone. I almost dropped my rifle because that wasn't the seedling speaking. That was something bigger beyond the rift still watching. We detonated the facility. The forest burned. The snow melted for miles. We left no trace, no survivors, no gods. After that we scattered. Some went underground, others fled off-world, through private colony gates. Me, I returned to the wasteland. The world still thinks the war is over, that the sovereign sleeps, that we are safe. But I know better. Somewhere out there, beyond light, beyond time, something waits. It knows Earth is special. It knows humans can hurt it, and one day it will come back. But if it does, I'll be waiting with fire in my hands and the shadow of revenge in my lungs. It started with static, a faint crackle on a dead channel, one we hadn't used since the first war ended. Buried deep in the code was a frequency signature only one ship ever used. The Revenant. I sat up from my cot in the wasteland bunker, the metal frame groaning beneath me. My breath caught in my throat. The Revenant was destroyed. We watched it fall. We saw its core overload, saw it light up the sky. But the signal was clean, sharp. And then came the words, "This is Captain Devereaux. The Sovereign has moved." I stood frozen. Old scars throbbed. My fingers went numb. Repeat, "This is Devereaux. I don't know how long I have. The Sovereign has Breached dimensional anchor, Earth's. Decay field no longer holds. Time. Variance anomaly detected. Estimated. Contact in T-37 days. The message ended. No coordinates, no. Sign off, just the end of everything. Wrapped in a whisper from the grave, I activated every long-range comm I had. Left called everyone, Gareth Brennan. Sung Lyra. Even Rafe, who had vanished into the Eurasian ruins, living off-grid with a makeshift community of orphaned kids. They all came back. Because Devaro's voice wasn't just a warning, it was a call to arms. We met on the edge of the Great Scar. The crater left behind when the Sovereign first screamed into Earth's gravity field. The sky there was different always. Dull, always a shade darker than the rest of the world. No birds, no wind. Just pressure. Like something watching. We stood in the shadow of the world's grave, staring at the stars. The dimensional anchor broke, Gareth said. The decay field tethered the Sovereign to Earth's energy, bound it. But not forever, we only slowed it down. Now it's free, Lyra added, not just to move but to reshape. Reshape what? Brennan asked. Gareth looked at me. Time. He explained what he found. After the facility raid, he'd kept a piece of the seedling hidden, studied it in secret. The neural imprint inside had no end state. Its biological signature wasn't linear, it was recursive. The Sovereign didn't evolve through time, it was time. It rewrote causality to suit its survival. The past, present, and future weren't events, it treated them as tools. And now, untethered, it could do what it always intended, rewrite everything. The war forgotten. Earth's resistance erased. Its goal wasn't domination, it was revision. The revenant signal came from outside our solar system, a deep space echo, bouncing between gravitational lenses. Like a ghost through mirrors. We tracked it to a single location. The Uid Expanse, a dead zone beyond Pluto where no human probes had ever returned from. And something was moving out there. A rift, a new one. Not torn open in anger like the first. This one was stable, measured. Intentional, a doorway home. If we let it stabilize, the Sovereign wouldn't need Earth. It could reshape the galaxy from outside. And Earth would simply stop having existed. We had one shot. Gareth had rebuilt the Phantom Wrath. Upgraded, reinforced, patched with the bones of every other ship we'd ever flown. Soon brought a new payload. A quantum shatter bomb designed to collapse spatial anomalies by disrupting entropy patterns. It had never been tested. It likely never would be again. We set course for the Uid Expanse. Just 6 of us. In a ship that shouldn't fly. To fight a thing that shouldn't exist. The journey took 9 days. 9 days of silence, of watching the stars bleed into strange shapes as we passed the outer edges of the system. On the 5th day, the hallucinations started. Lyra saw her dead brother, burned in the Vora uprising, standing in the corridor. Brennan began talking to his younger self. Soon wept every night in his sleep, whispering an apology to a wife no one ever knew he had. And me. I saw Devero, standing in the engine room, arms crossed, his jaw set. He didn't speak, just stared. Judging. On day 9, we reached the anomaly. It didn't look like a rift, it looked like a mirror, a vast sheet of liquid Metal suspended in space, stretching beyond the edge of the scanner's range. And behind it, flickers, fragments. I saw Earth, but not our Earth. It was unscarred. Pristine towering cities, no war, no ruins. They're building a replacement, Gareth said, a version of reality where the sovereign was always worshipped, always supreme, a perfect lie, and we were the last crack in it. We launched the bomb. Soon flew it manually, no autopilot, no AI. The payload required a human trigger, a decision, intent. He saluted as he left the docking bay. Said nothing. He didn't need to. We watched as the small ship dove into the rift, and we waited. 4 minutes, then 5, then light. A flash so pure, so deep, it cut across every layer of space like a scalpel. The rift shattered. Pieces of false stars and broken timelines peeled away like paint from a wall. The mirror cracked, collapsed, imploded. We screamed as the wave hit us, gravity folding, sensors screaming, hull bending, and then silence. The phantom wrath drifted, systems dead, oxygen dropping, no comms. But we were alive. Somehow. The rift was gone. The rewrite aborted. The sovereign. We didn't know. Not for sure. Gareth believed it was thrown backward. Into the void before time. Before thought. Brennan believed it was still watching. Waiting for entropy to fray again. Me, I believed in Devura because the message didn't come from a ghost. It came from a place beyond the end, a man who stepped outside the story and chose to leave us a warning. Earth still spins, cities rebuild, the governments paint their new flags, they write history books filled with lies. They call the war a victory of diplomacy. They teach children that humanity welcomed peace into its arms. But some of us remember, not for glory, not for pride, but because we know what waits on the edge. And one day, when time stutters again, when the sky fractures, it will try to return. And when it does, we'll light the fires again. We'll call the ships back, we'll become ghosts in the dark, and we will bleed the stars to keep Earth whole. One more time, and maybe the last.